If I'm encountering men who have not had those foundational paradigm-altering conversations in their youth, like at the start of you developing into a man and figuring out who you are as a person, if nobody has had those conversations with you, what am I supposed to do with you when I get to you?
Well, yeah.
We don't have nothing to talk about.
Real life problems.
As you were talking, this is the word that came to my mind. So what you think about this word, entitlement?
I knew you were gonna say that.
So,
Because a lot of people define my generation and younger as being entitled.
what's wrong with the commitment? Tell me that. Help me understand. What is wrong with committing?
Real people.
If we're not healthy emotionally within ourselves, it's going to be very difficult. You're going to bring that unhealthiness into your singleness.
Right.
And you bring that unhealthiness into your singleness because now you see your singleness as problematic.
You make the singleness is problematic is interesting, and it kind of makes me feel a way, because we started off the conversation talking about how marriage for a long time was this good goal to get to, this kind of like exciting benchmark in your life.
Coming up with real solutions.
Maybe there are more levels of, I don't want to say brokenness, but kind of what you were describing, fragility and like emotional turmoil. Maybe there are more levels of that than we realize, or that we're interested in recognizing. It's hard to be introspective when you're the problem. It's hard to say.
But see, I'm not saying you're the problem. Welcome to a special edition of Real Life Matters. I have a very special guest. I'll let you know something about her very quickly. Look at her over here, see. Oh, Lord have mercy.
We're going to have a good time today, y'all.
So I got my very special Segula, my special baby girl with me today, Jasa.
Woo-hoo.
Yep.
Hey, y'all.
So Jasa is going to be with me today. We're going to have a very special edition of Real Life Matters. I've been talking for the first several episodes of Real Life Matters. We've been talking about fatherhood, manhood, marriage, and I've been talking to men and boys about that topic. And that's been really good. But I have a daughter. I'm not going to tell you how old she is. She's older than 10. I'll just say that. So I have a daughter, and in having a daughter, we also talk about fatherhood, manhood,
Yes.
and marriage from a very different perspective. And so we saw this video one day about it with a father and his daughter talking. I think they were cooking or something. We said, you know what? We should do that.
Yes.
And so we love to talk to each. We love to talk, and we love to talk to each other.
We do.
And so we thought, you know what? Let's try that ourselves. And so we're not going to copy the other one and do the cooking. So we're just going to drink a little something here in the cups. But this is the deal. Let me give you some place where this comes from. When Jasa was a little girl, I'm going to say she's probably about 12 when we started this. We used to do what we call daddy-daughter walk talks. And the daddy-daughter walk talk was basically, we would just walk around the block and talk. Sometimes she was in trouble. Okay, a lot of times.
Important preface.
Yes, sometimes she was in trouble.
Yes.
But a lot of times we were just doing it.
Yep.
We were just talking about life and about stuff. And so we had some really good conversations, and I think that kind of set the tone for our relationship to be able to talk about just about anything. Sometimes stuff that I might not even want to talk about, but we ain't gonna talk about that right now.
It's good to be open and
yes,
honest.
but we have that ability that we can sit up and talk about just about anything. And so we thought that why not take some of that conversation, put it on camera, because I got a feeling that a lot of other folks are having these same questions that we talk about. I know some of her friends have the same questions, and I think some of her friends have even provided some questions for us to talk about. So we thought we would just chop it up a little bit.
Let's have a chit chat.
Have a little chit chat, and so we're going to do our version of daddy-daughter walk talk with a couple of little twists.
Some tweaks.
One, it's inside because it's 100 degrees outside. Okay, so it's too hot. My head would be shining if we did that.
Very sweaty.
Yeah, very sweaty. And then the other thing is that we don't want to have to walk and try to have a camera following us. So we're doing a daddy-daughter walk talk where it's more like a daddy-daughter sit and
down.
chit-chat. How about that? All right?
Yep. It's a coffee break.
All right, so let's go.
Yes.
Let's get into this thing and give me a little dap here.
A little dap.
Little dap. There you
Okay.
go. All right, we got a little dap.
We spend a lot of time talking about, relationship things, which he won't tell you how old I am. I'm in my 30s, right? So I think that a lot of the conversations, I'm in my 30s, right?
Lord have mercy.
I mean,
You're getting older.
Yeah.
You're older than me now.
It's crazy. He's one to talk. So I think those conversations become, really central to your life. The older you get, you think about kind of how like society expects us to like go down this certain path. And so I think sometimes it's hard to avoid those conversations when like everyone around you is married, everyone around you is in a relationship. Most people in my age group are married, starting their families, having kids. And so that's not quite the phase of life that I have gotten to yet. And so I think we do have a lot of conversations about men, since that's your niche. You talk a lot with men and boys about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Conversation that I have been having quite often with people close to me, homegirls and stuff like that, is about kind of like men's ability to commit. So, my generation, we're kind of in this weird in between where like commitment is kind of sort of important, but then it's kind of sort of not. And you know how you and I have had a lot of conversations about titles, like what's a situationship, what's a relationship, what's dating. So something I think could be helpful to define as we're having these conversations is like, what do all of those terms mean? And like maybe what is your take on some of those terms?
Okay, so yes, that's a good place to start. I know when I'm talking with teenagers a lot, and we start talking about, I used to do this thing called the Relationship Factory, where I would have lunch with these teenagers. And I realized that there was a generation gap in terms of terms. And so there's an old movie called Cool Hand Luke. And the guy would say, what we have here is a failure to communicate. And I realized that very often I was having a failure to communicate because we were defining terms.
Talking about two different things.
Talking about two different things.
Yep.
So I would often say, let's define terms.
Sure.
Okay. So let's look at some of those things in terms of definitions. And I need you to help me because I never understood situationship.
Yeah, they're a problem.
What is a situationship?
We don't like those. I would say my generation, I'm a millennial, right? I would say my generation probably defines a situationship as being with somebody and having all of the perks of being in a relationship. So having the title, the commitment of somebody saying, I desire to be in a relationship with you, but that part hasn't happened. That super important central piece has not happened. Asking to be in a relationship.
Okay, so you want to be in a relationship, but you don't ask.
The person, usually if you're, I date men, so the man I'm expecting is going to ask me, do you want to be in a relationship with me? After like a designated period of dating or courting, and that's another term we can define. But a situationship, which, is popular nowadays, unfortunately, that is kind of a limbo. It's giving purgatory. Like you're trapped in this kind of in between, like will he, won't he? There's a lot of maybe uncertainty, or maybe a term that I hate when I hear it is, I'm just going with the flow. I'm just figuring things out. Very, very much not sure of who you are and what you're doing. And I know something, that we'll probably talk about later is that piece of identity. I definitely feel like knowing who you are and knowing what you want is directly tied into your ability to commit and be with somebody, appropriately. So I feel like that's probably a piece of it. But situationship just means we're doing boyfriend, girlfriend, partner things, but there is no official, it's not in any official capacity, which is a problem.
That is a problem.
It sounds weird, right?
That is a problem. And I think that explains a lot. And I'm not sure how much we want to talk about those things. We just want to define terms and then come back. I don't know. We'll figure that out.
Sure,
So,
sure.
listen, if y'all were looking for an outline, it ain't going to happen.
We're
I'm
just
saying right
chit-chatting.
now. We just chopping it
We're
up.
just yapping.
Okay, yep. So, situationship is we're in a relationship with no definition.
No definition.
No
There may not
definition
even be
and not even a goal.
a goal. Maybe not.
Okay.
And it feels very aimless. It feels purposeless almost.
Okay, so do you all use the term dating anymore?
I would say I do. I would say I use dating when I am probably talking to someone and there is a mutual romantic interest.
Okay.
So
you
so
just used another one now.
Talking?
Yeah.
I would say that I know, isn't that funny? We have so many different terms. I would say that I use talking in the context of dating to mean I am having conversations with this person to decide if we might have some chemistry, some compatibility, and we might be able to be on the same page about what our trajectory looks like.
So talking may be an entry point.
Talking is definitely an entry point,
And so would dating be the next level?
If it's helpful to create kind of a hierarchy, I would
Yeah.
definitely say talking is your foundation. And maybe even before that is like, I'm acknowledging, I see somebody across the room, okay. And then we're talking, we might exchange information. Maybe it's like, okay, I'm interested in this person is interested in me. So then you have talking. And then once you establish what type of talking we're doing, and maybe there is a romantic sort of atmosphere, if you will, about things. We might go on a date, we might go out and get coffee, we might be talking about the things that we want relationship-wise.
You might be talking about going out and getting coffee.
Don't get confused. Don't get confused with the first level of talking, okay?
Okay, I got you.
Because I think the type of talking that you do determines if it is dating or not. It's complicated.
It's complicated.
It's complicated. And I wish it wasn't. And I feel like we also talk a lot about just the difference between, like you mentioned, the generational difference that exists, this kind of gap in knowledge between when you were, pursuing mom or, other women that you've dated before mom, when you were in that phase, the landscape was totally different. All of the tools that I have at my disposal, you didn't have at your disposal. And I would argue that the tools that I have at my disposal can sometimes be a hindrance. They can be overwhelming. They can be just like not.
Tools. What do you mean by tools?
Like dating apps.
Oh, Lord.
Social media. I know. And social media is great, right? Like we're able to use it. No, it's very much a hand on my forehead. Like what's going on? Because I think it becomes, that could be a whole other conversation about how we get caught up in looking at other people, comparing ourselves to other people. But that's another topic for another day.
Yeah.
I will say that a lot of people...
In the words of Jonathan McReynolds, comparison kills.
There you go.
There you go.
You gonna sing for the people?
No, I ain't gonna sing. Okay.
So I think using social media, using dating apps, dating apps were, those are new. Those are, 10, 12 years old maybe. They're relatively new and kind of like very new in the landscape of dating. So I think having all of these tools at your disposal can be helpful, but I ultimately feel like we're going down a path where none of that stuff is helpful in the end.
So when you look at all of these different options, definitions,
goals
and comparison and all those things like that, I wonder why, with all of those things, I wonder how that affects, how those things itself, the fact that you have all of those different categories, how that affects commitment.
Sure.
I wonder about that.
I have thoughts about that. Namely, and you can tell me kind of like your perspective on this and maybe what you've seen with, your high schoolers that you work with, and then like your, the men that you mentor in those spaces. I think that there are now too many options available, and it gives almost this false sense of like, I have all of these different people I can choose from, and there's a what's the word? An aspect of instant gratification that's happening. Like if you take a dating app, somebody's face is right here in the palm of your hand, and you can read this quick little blurb about them. And if I like them, I swipe right. And if I don't like them, I swipe left. And so there's a level of instant gratification that happens. We don't really do good in terms of being patient and kind of like being intentional about pursuing someone. There's all of this like easy, immediate access that's happening. And it makes it so that you just have an overwhelming, abundant amount of options. And so why would I want to settle down and commit when I can kind of just cherry pick who I want to talk to, what they look like? It makes it easy to get away.
It does, but I think that, and I'm not sure if I want to go here yet, but I'm gonna go here for right now. I think when you start talking about the commitment issue, to me, the ultimate commitment is marriage.
100%.
That's the ultimate commitment. And so I believe that the way I see relationships being defined, commitment is not a part of that.
Okay, say more.
Yeah, I think that it is. Relationships right now are a mile wide and an inch deep.
Very shallow.
Very shallow. And so I used to do this when I was doing my leadership school with leadership school and talking to students. And we would talk about, at that time, whether it was Facebook or whatever your social media presence was. And let's use Facebook where you talk about friends.
Sure.
And I would, when I would do my relationship class, I would ask the kids, how many friends do you have? And they'd look up their phone. I got 500 friends. I got 1,000 friends. I got 3 friends.
Going to their phones is
going to their phone to determine how many friends they have.
Yes.
So I said, okay, how many? So friends. Let's define friends.
Sure.
If I say that, I said, how many of those people have you ever had a meal with? How many of those people have ever been to your home? How many of those people have you ever ridden in a car with and you trusted them to drive you?
Yep.
How many of those people would you trust with your little sister or your little brother or your mother?
Your kid, yeah.
Or your kid.
Yep.
When you look at that, for me, for you to get that label of friend, you got to do more than a click or a swipe. Then there's a depth to that.
Sure.
But when it seems like almost the goal is collecting, is skiing rather than scuba diving.
Absolutely.
Skiing is the adrenaline rush of skimming across the water at high speed with the thrill and look, I'm staying above water.
Right.
Scuba diving is slowing down, sinking, and seeing what is the depth of the water and what's in it. You can't see coral reef
when you're water skiing.
When you're water skiing.
No, when you're on the surface.
You can't see Nemo when you're water skiing.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
You also can't get eaten by a shark, but that's a different story.
Yeah, he does. He don't do the water.
Okay.
Don't do the ocean.
Yeah, I do. I like the ocean. I just like it from a distance.
Sure.
So, but what I'm saying is that you look at that. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
To slow down and to sink.
Yeah.
And I believe when you have all these options where you don't have to, it becomes, you now have to say, wait a minute, what do I do with all of these people? And there's an absence of commitment to those things. So I think that's why you get situationship, because I don't think marriage is a value.
I think too, and
tell me if I'm wrong.
I would say, I don't want to get like super #woke, but I also know that there is a lot of discourse happening too around how marriage does not benefit women in terms of it being like more transactional, or if we're being real, marriage is a business agreement. Like you do sign a piece of paper saying I am connected to this person in this specific way. And so I think there is a lot of discourse happening around people not valuing it, but for reasons that I had previously not really considered.
Yeah,
Just
but even that I think that's really interesting. Marriage being
absolutely.
transactional.
Absolutely. It's a business arrangement. It's a business agreement. It's a legally binding thing that's happening between two people. And I think, depending on the lens through which you view the world, if you are a Christian, marriage has a much deeper value than maybe somebody who doesn't identify as Christian or has a different religious lens. So I think it depends, but I feel like I've definitely heard a lot of chatter, if you will, about it being not necessarily beneficial, and people are okay to be in, what is it called, like this is my live-in partner, this is my common law person.
Okay,
there's a
so
shift towards that too.
I'm not even going to go the religious route.
Okay.
I'm not even going there.
All
Okay,
right.
that's a difference. I could go there, but we ain't going there.
We won't go there
I'm
today.
going to stay strictly marriage from a relational standpoint.
Sure.
I think the very fact that you can go, that marriage has been reduced to a transactional relationship and defined in terms of benefit. I think that in and of itself says something about the value of relationship.
And the shift that we're headed.
There's a shift, right?
What we're trending towards. Absolutely.
Right. I think that's a function of that.
Absolutely.
Because I know some Christians who have the crappiest marriages I've ever seen in my life.
Me too.
Okay. And so I know some people who ain't never stepped in the church and have the best relationships that I've ever seen.
Super solid marriages.
Right?
Yep.
So functionally, marriage is not about a transaction. Marriage is about a relationship. Okay? But I think it's very interesting if this chatter is about marriage benefits men more than women. I think the exact opposite is true.
I've heard.
I think the exact opposite. So let's look at it this way.
Sure.
If you go back, why with divorce, in times, women were property. So if you didn't have anything, the marriage itself created a safe space for a woman.
Yes. Yeah.
Because now there is a legal thing in case you decide, I don't like the way you are folding the clothes or cooking the oatmeal, I can't just toss you out. No, there's some repercussions. So I was reading the other day with Michael Jordan. Juanita.
Was Juanita the first wife?
Juanita was the first wife. Juanita, she was the one who initiated the prenuptial agreement. Michael didn't. Juanita did.
She could have took that man.
Right.
For all he
She
had.
did the prenup agreement, and to say, in the event, I get this, this, and this.
Sure.
If she didn't have that, he could walk away. She walked away with $168 million. Okay? Now, that benefited her. And without marriage, she got nothing.
Right.
So this idea that some kind of way, I'm not sure about, we've created these narratives about the patriarchal society.
Absolutely.
And listen, you ain't gonna get no argument from me. Yes, men have been jackasses when it comes to dealing with, in terms of respecting women.
Sure.
But the idea that the marriage only benefits the man, I have a little bit of hard time seeing that one.
That's fair.
I
Could we
think
debate
that-
for another day?
Yeah, we have to debate that one for another day. But the fact that we have reduced marriage to a transactional relationship, as opposed to we have decided that we are better together than we are apart.
Yes.
And we've made this commitment to each other.
Yes.
There's a safety in that.
I agree. And I think there's still, a large amount. I know in my friend group, there's still a lot of women and men I know that desire it. But I think, to kind of loop back to, we were talking about the fear of commitment, kind of like these issues that come with committing to someone and saying, you know, I want to follow this specific course and I want to be with you. Yeah, we're shifting away from that being kind of a goal. We're shifting away from like, oh, I get a house and I get a wife and a house and like the 2.5 kids. That is becoming less and less a desire for people.
What's wrong with the commitment? Tell me that. Help me understand. What is wrong with committing? Is it FOMO?
It could be FOMO. It could be fear of missing out. I think there's definitely a level of fear. I think there's a level of I don't want to be tied down. I maybe just want to see what's out there. I'm interested in just kind of doing my own thing, and maybe there's a level of I don't have to answer to somebody. Maybe there's a level maybe there's a financial level. It could be a number of things. And I know that you know, men and women are wired differently. You and I have those conversations all the time about, you know, biological differences, but also like emotional and cognitive differences. And I definitely think that women are we are very relational in how we engage with like our, you know, our friends and like our moms and our sisters. We are also very relational, and so I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I think there's just a lot of difficulties in finding a guy who is interested in dating intentionally and that commitment becoming kind of the ultimate commitment that is marriage. And I think it could be a number of things. And I feel like it's frustrating because I would like to know, me as, you know, my therapist brain is like trying to analyze, like, well, what went wrong? What's happening in society? What are we trending towards? And it's really hard to pinpoint, I feel like, what exactly is what is discouraging men. And I don't want to make a generalization because not all men, that's not fair. But when the conversations that you and I have also had about, I mean, and isn't there data to support, I should have came prepared with some statistics, isn't there data to support the rate of single Black women? And then the rates of singleness become higher depending on education, depending on your income. Like that's something that we've talked about a little bit.
Yeah,
So
I don't have any data on
we
that.
don't have the data on it.
Yeah, but I think that, yeah, that could be. But I think that why is it, and again, my work, I do a lot of work with, and maybe you can look it up while we're talking.
Sure.
But I think that my work that I do with men, boys, young men, looks at what is happening within the culture, what's happening within them.
Socially, environmentally.
Right, that is causing men to be not as engaged as they need to be. And I think a lot of it also, it to a certain degree, it becomes which came first, the chicken or the egg, because it becomes this cyclical thing. If you don't have strong families, there's a good possibility, strong communities, the foundation of strong communities is strong families.
Yep.
The foundation of strong families is strong marriages.
Yeah, strong couples.
Yeah, and so then the foundation of strong marriages, strong couples, is healthy singles. And then the foundation of healthy singles is healthy sense of self. So if we're not healthy emotionally in ourself, forget being single.
Right.
If we're not healthy emotionally within ourselves, it's going to be very difficult. You're going to bring that unhealthiness into your singleness.
Right.
And you bring that unhealthiness into your singleness because now you see your singleness as problematic. Okay?
You make the singleness is problematic is interesting, and it kind of makes me feel a way because we started off the conversation talking about how marriage for a long time was this good goal to get to, this kind of like exciting benchmark in your life, if you will. But I feel like at least I know for me personally, there is a level of frustration, I think, and resentment that does make it easier to, what did you say about healthy single? It makes it more difficult, I think, to maintain maybe like the integrity, or it makes it more difficult, I think, to get to a place where that is still a desire, and seeing marriage as something that is good and healthy and a goal to work towards, when me and I know a lot of other women that I am in community with encounter roadblock after roadblock after roadblock with dating and with relationships. So I think it's just, it kind of just brought up that. And I wonder like what you have seen in terms of, we've talked about it a little bit, but just the shift in terms of, you're saying emotionally healthy individuals. Do you feel like there's been maybe like a shift in the emotions of men that you work with, or like boys that you work with, or what type of shifts, I guess, are you seeing that maybe have led us to this place where we are right now, where dating is incredibly difficult, and as a result, like finding a partner and marriage is incredibly difficult?
Yeah, I think that, oh man, there's so much there. I think that there is a shift. And as a therapist, I think we've talked about this before. I think to a certain degree, therapy is not always as helpful as it could be. Okay, nice. Oh, you feeling some kind of way now. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Now, listen, I'm married to a psychologist, and my segular here is a therapist. So I've been dealing with that, for a long time.
For a
long time. Okay, but what I mean by that is this: I think the purpose of therapy should be to get you healed and healthy, so that you know how to properly regulate and manage the hills and the valleys, the drama and the trauma, the strain and the drain of life. Okay?
Pocket.
I believe, though, that what I hear from therapy, people in therapy right now, is not telling people to deal with it. It's not telling people to get strong. It's giving people, be comfortable in your uncomfortableness. Be uncomfortable get comfortable in your dysfunction. It's okay. It's okay, because if I tell you something is wrong, if I tell you you're unhealthy, now I'm being toxic. If I challenge you, then some kind of way I'm being intolerant.
Sure.
If I challenge you, I'm not really loving you, and I'm shaming you. And so therefore what it does is it tells people too often, you're broken, but you're not broken. You're okay. Yes, your leg is hanging off, but you know what? That's just your self-expression.
It's just a gunshot wound.
It's just a gunshot wound. You know what? Just manifest that differently. You'll be okay. Okay, I know I'm stepping on some toes now. So I'm about to get canceled. That's okay
So
though.
my
Hold on a second.
I
Hold on
will
a second.
cancel you.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
So what I'm getting at with that is that I believe to a certain degree that there's a level of fragility
Absolutely.
that has been created by everybody wanting to validate feelings without challenging whether or not those feelings are healthy.
Absolutely.
And so that creates a fragility. And so I think about going back to when Jerron, your little brother, was maybe, I don't know what, how T-ball age, 3, something like that, 3,
Little.
4. Little, right. And I remember coaching baseball. And I just remember how everybody got a trophy.
Yeah, you get that participation
Everybody
trophy.
get that participation trophy. And I remember when I finally gave up coaching, because a little boy he got a hit. I think he hit the ball, but he ran to second base. He went around first base, ran to second base, and they threw him out at second base. And I said, he's out. And then they said, no, send him back to first.
Oh, Lord.
I said, no, he ran to second, he's out. Oh, he made a mistake, he should go back to first. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, that kid's not going to the
No,
major leagues.
you're right. You learn from your mistakes, and you
100%.
learn that not everything is going. You're not going to win all the time. You don't get participation trophies in life.
Yep.
So therefore, when you leave the cocoon, the safety of the cocoon of the family that gives you participation trophies, and you get into the real world that kicks you in the teeth, you're not ready for it.
That's so.
So that's what I mean by this fragility. And then that fragility, now that says something about my sense of self. Where does my value come from? Where does my strength come from?
Right.
You know, and I think that I just say one little thing real quick, and I want you to go ahead and jump in. But I remember when watching me and Mom sitting watching you and Jerron play basketball or football or baseball or whatever you were playing. Track, but especially in the team sports.
Yes.
The track was an individual sport.
Okay, fair.
But in the team sports. And I remember you all would complain, they fouled me and nothing happened. Or I didn't get this call, or I didn't get this call, or that kind of thing. And of course, moms being nurturing and loving and wanting to protect their children, that's right. They hit you. They should have. What's wrong with that referee?
Hollering at the ref.
Hollering at the ref. My response would usually be one of two things. You didn't lose because the ref made a bad call. You lost because you missed 18 free throws. Or the other thing that I would say to you all often was what? DWI. Deal with it.
Deal with it. Yep.
Life is not fair.
Yep.
And growing up thinking that life will always be fair and I always get what I want and I don't have to sacrifice and that is not life. That creates a fundamental brokenness in your sense of self. And so now you bring that brokenness into that singleness. Because wait a minute, I'm supposed to get what I want. And I'm seeing myself only in relationship to another person.
Right.
As opposed to me.
Right.
And am I good with me? If it ain't nothing else, I'm good with me. I'm good with being in the house with me. I'm good with the person that I see. If you don't have that healthy sense of self, now you go into a relationship waiting for somebody else to give you something that maybe they don't have the capacity to give, but you're demanding it.
Right.
Because you don't have a sense of identity.
Right. You're trying
apart
to fill
from something else.
Right. Yeah. I wonder too, just about there's a lot of conversations I think that happen where, you know, I'm doing everything the right way. I'm doing everything how I'm supposed to, and like things don't align for me, or things are not aligning for me. And I want, it kind of just makes me wonder about, how much self-reflection or how much introspection is happening with single people, or like in our communities, where you think maybe that you're kind of like doing everything the right way, or you think that I'm on the right path, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and like things are not working out. So I guess I wonder too, just about the levels of kind of like self-awareness and like conversations that we're having with ourselves, because maybe there are more levels of, I don't want to say brokenness, but kind of what you were describing, fragility and like emotional turmoil. Maybe there are more levels of that than we realize, or that we're interested in recognizing. It's hard to be introspective when you're the problem. It's hard to say.
But see, I'm not saying you're the problem. I'm just simply saying you're not operating with the skill set that allows you to effectively deal with your trauma, your drama, with your feelings, your emotions. If you don't know how to self-regulate, if you don't know what happens when you skin your knee? So what do? Are you gonna die?
Yeah, you're not gonna die.
You ain't gonna die, but I think so. Now I think some kids they might die from a skin knee because, it's like it's just so much protection. Because and I think as you were talking, this is the word that came to my mind. Tell me what you think about this word, entitlement.
I knew you were gonna say that.
So,
because a lot of people define my generation and younger as being entitled, expecting things to happen how we think they're supposed to happen, expecting things to kind of fall into our lap and be exactly how they're supposed to be. So
So am I wrong? Am I being judgmental? I mean,
I mean,
so let's talk about this entitlement thing, because we may be using it. You may be as making an assumption that I am being pejorative when I say entitlement.
sure. I think there's a level of
In your
entitlement
feelings.
that, yeah, I'm not in my feelings yet, not yet. You know, this has been a smooth convo so far. I would say there is a
I'm messing
level.
up then if I ain't getting your feelings yet.
Not yet. We haven't. Wait, listen. This has been an okay convo.
Okay, all right,
I
good.
ain't talked about myself yet.
All right.
That's when the feelings come out.
All right.
No,
Check this out.
I would say that there are levels of pretty high levels of entitlement that do exist, but if I'm going to play devil's advocate, which I know people hate when that happens, but if I'm playing devil's advocate, sometimes I think entitlement comes because what I was referencing earlier, you think that you are doing everything that you're supposed to do. And I'm putting it in quotes because that's going to be subjective from person to person. You think that you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're on the straight and narrow, whatever terminology applies to you in terms of I've done the things, why are the rewards not coming to me? I think I feel that way 100%. And I know a lot of people also feel similarly. And since we're talking about relationships, I definitely think it's really easy to kind of become like, woe is me. Like, I don't understand why, I go to church. And so I'm trying to meet a man at church, or I go to the library, I go to the community events, I volunteer. It's almost like, this frustration that comes with not finding what it is you're looking for, even though you're doing kind of like what your parents have told you, you're doing maybe what society has suggested. There are levels of, I don't want to, it's not a cognitive dissonance, it's not like a contradiction, but there are levels of why is something not happening for me even though I have done what I was told to do?
There is, and this is not even necessarily generational, millennial, Z, anything like this. I was thinking about the idea of entitlement, that I am entitled to be married.
Mm.
Okay?
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
All right.
This idea, and this is where this comes from. I know this is the way we normally think, but this is the way I think. I believe that a lot of people, we socialized people.
Yes.
We do it in the church, we do it in culture. Everything, the ultimate in life is to be married.
Yeah. That's how my brain
Right.
operates.
And so therefore, if that is the ultimate, if that is the goal, and that is the reward, then I should expect if I do X, Y, and Z, I should end up with the guy on the white horse or with the white Porsche, with the six figures and looking good. Six figures, six pack.
2.5 kids.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
And 2.5 kids because you're perpetually pregnant. So okay, but you see what I'm saying? So if that is the ultimate societal reward, that you are supposed to be married, and if you do all of the right things, you will get married. I believe that even fundamentally, whereas that is a great goal, it is a great thing to get to. But that is fundamentally missing that healthy sense of self, because you cannot be healthy in yourself if you say, I cannot be good in myself. I can only be good in relationship to somebody else.
Sure. Yeah.
And my identity now has to be, who are you? You've heard me talk about this before, and I say, when you ask a person, who am I? They usually respond in one of these ways. They tell you who they're with, what they own, what they do, how they look, what they've accomplished, what other people say about them. And so when you look at those things, but all of those things are smoky.
Right.
They don't last.
Right.
And they can go in a heartbeat.
Yep, they can.
So when you base your identity based upon what somebody else gives you or says about you from that standpoint, as opposed to understanding intrinsically who you are, now I cannot be whole until I get this other person in my life. That's the entitlement that I'm talking about. I wonder how that sense of entitlement to a marriage or to that type of relationship, that to me, that's problematic. And how we shift that, I don't know if we can, because we have hundreds of years of that thinking. And I just think that I need to be okay with me. I need to be okay with me. I remember when me and Mom started dating. I'm going to go back to, and a lot of this comes from the sense of purpose. But I was 27. No, when we started dating, I was 25. We got married when I was 27. But I remember one of our first dates, I said to her, listen, I'm happy. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm operating, doing the thing that I believe that I was created to do. I know how to cook, wash, sew, clean. I can do anything. I do not need a maid. I am fully self-sufficient. I do not need a maid. And even at that moment when I started dating Mom, I hadn't even been in a dating relationship for 7 years. And I was okay. Now I fell for her. I saw her little cute self sitting across the room.
Very cute. Very
right.
cute.
But what I'm saying, but at that moment, but I told her, I am not looking for somebody to take care of me. I am okay with me. And I said, so we can date and we can become friends. If something happens, then I marry my friend. If it doesn't, I got a new friend.
Sure.
But I didn't feel like it was my birthright to be married, because it is possible to have a very full life when you understand purpose. But when your ultimate goal is marriage rather than being the person that you were created to be, when your ultimate goal is marriage, you may miss out on purpose, identity, because you're chasing something with the wrong idea about what that thing is going to give you.
I can't speak for anybody else except me, but I think that what you were talking about earlier, the socialization piece, I think that's very difficult to unlearn. And I think that
Yep, I agree.
For me, my example has been healthy marriage. I come from a 2-parent household. My parents have never not been together. I've never known a life without having a mom and a dad that are married and demonstrate that to my sibling and I. So I think that at this point in my life, I would argue for me, and again, I can't speak for anybody else, for me, I do have a very full life. You know that. I am all over the place. I travel.
Flying dangin'.
I am a flang danger. Okay. I travel, internationally as much as I can. I have a dog. I have a bunch of friends. I sit on boards. I work lots of jobs, right? I'm a homeowner. I would argue that both things are true in the sense that I feel pretty good about my sense of self. And that is obviously, homage to how you and Mom raised me. I feel great about who I am. You got to clock it. Yeah. I feel great about who I am as a person, but there is a lot of unlearning. Again, I tell my clients all the time, both things can be true. I can't even think of or I would say the older I've gotten, the easier it has become to imagine just my life just like this. As you're talking about, how do you define yourself? I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a godmommy,
Auntie.
I'm an auntie, right? I am happy with those roles. And I think the older I get and how dating is treacherous, the easier it is to settle into those roles and continue to walk and thrive in my purpose. But I also am very keenly aware of the fact that it is incredibly difficult for me to unlearn seeing myself in the future as a wife and a mom. And because I was raised a certain way, I do equate also those two things together. If I'm going to become a mother, I would like to be a wife. There's a certain order that I would like to do things, right? So I think I'm saying all that to say it is challenging, I think, to kind of put myself in that spot where that may or may not happen for me. It may happen, it may not. And being okay with who I am as a person, who I am as a woman, all of my other salient identities, it's difficult, I think, to kind of remove that from who I want to be and who I think I'm gonna be in the future.
So let me clarify. I'm not saying that that sense of entitlement of wanting that, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that wanting to be married is a bad thing.
Sure.
I'm not saying that at all. I think when it comes to relationships, and I had a lady say this to me the other day who's going through a very ugly divorce, and I just thought this was a very interesting statement because I don't think I've ever heard anybody say it.
Sure.
She said, when it comes to relationships, marriage is the safest relationship. I went, wow, I've never heard anybody say that before.
Me neither. Yeah, what about it is safe?
But it's safe from the standpoint of if your relationships are a mile wide and an inch deep, do you have any idea what that person is bringing into your life? All of these different relationships. If you are, so we talked about situationships, we talked about dating, we talked about talking. We ain't talked about Netflix and chill. We ain't talked about hooking up. Friends with benefits. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So we ain't talked about none of those things. That ain't safe.
No, it is
so
not.
If you out here hooking up with,
unpredictable.
It's completely unpredictable because you have no idea.
Absolutely.
You know who are you bringing into your bedroom? You have no idea what diseases, what mental issues, what
baggage,
people, baggage. You don't know what you're bringing in.
That's fair.
So from that standpoint, to be able to say that I am connected with this person for life and there are no other doors into my life.
There should not be.
That's what I'm saying. But in a healthy relationship.
The best case scenario.
That's what I'm saying. It is
just you two.
It is just you two. I am not worried about catching something.
Sure.
I ain't worried about, wait a minute, is there going to be somebody who's going to show up at my house, because I'm not worried about this thing. So it's safe from that standpoint.
That makes sense.
Okay?
That makes sense.
So what I'm saying is that there's nothing wrong with the relationship, with wanting to be married. And I think it's great. I think there's power in that. There's a synergy that comes from that is good. And I think we are built for relationship.
We're relational people.
We're relational people.
Humans are fundamentally
right.
relational.
I mean, geese mate for life.
Yep.
Come on. If geese can do it, I think we can.
We can do it,
right?
yeah.
So there's nothing, I'm not saying fundamentally there's anything wrong with that. What I was getting at, because let me before I finish my thought, there were people who would say, of course you can say that, you can talk about, be satisfied being single. You got a wife, and so therefore it'd be easy just to cancel me from that standpoint to say,
we're not going to cancel you,
but you could discredit.
Absolutely.
You could easily discredit and turn me off and mute me because you don't.
The perspective is not the same.
Is not the same.
You're not in the trenches with me.
Right. But at the same time, I do also know it is really important that if in the event that thing which you desire does not happen, how do you respond to that?
Right.
And you cannot properly respond to the trauma if you have been so traumatized and so dysfunctional in your thinking and so unhealthy in your sense of self that you can't deal with a twist and a plot twist.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
I'm just saying is that just the fact that you get married does not mean you're going to have a good marriage. The fact that you are single does not mean that you are going to be miserable, person. I'm just saying if you are going to build the building blocks in an ideal world, you need to have a building block of healthiness in the single,
I agree.
healthiness in self, because now you can have a healthy dating relationship or romantic relationship. You can have a healthy marriage if you are building those things well. And so, because stuff happens, things don't always happen the way we plan. And guess what? We have to deal with
We
it.
got to be able to pivot.
You have to be able to pivot.
A lot of people struggle with pivoting. What do you say? What do you say to women like me that might have, these expectations around how their life is going to go and might be doing all of the things that we talked about? Like they might, be happy with their other identities and leading a full life, walking in their purpose. What do you say to women who might find themselves in that position where it seems like, oh, I am healthy though. I am addressing kind of like my emotional self and dealing with my baggage and unlearning the things that are, unhealthy and trying to learn new things and are still not maybe where they want to be romantically. Do you have any thoughts about that?
And again, I'm going to say the same thing. I think that those are the challenges of life that we all are going to have that spot. It may be a relationship, it may be a job, it may be something. How do I deal with the detours? When you're on 80 and the traffic stops, what do?
I take a deep breath.
Yeah, you take a deep breath.
Because I'm about to yell.
Right, but then some people end up with road rage.
Absolutely.
Right? Because they are so angry because their plans have not operated, have not actualized the way they want to.
Correct.
So what do you do with it? What do you do with it when there's an accident, there's a turnover, and traffic is sitting for an hour? What do you do with that?
Yeah.
To me, that is the essence of maturity, is to be able to say, no, I am not getting what I want. Maybe even what I feel like I deserve, but yet at the same time, I know how to deal with it from a healthy standpoint. It's adulting.
Sure. I think that's the level. There are levels of maturity that come with your life continues on, and you know how when you're a kid, you're like, oh, by the time I'm this age, I'll have this house and this many kids and this, I think it's a level of, like you said, accepting your life for what it is and where you are and being okay with the fact that you're on a different path maybe than what you expected. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're still not going to end up where you wanted to be in the end.
Right.
But it's a possibility. I think I have a lot of those conversations with myself, at this, and I'm not old, but it is easy, I think, just from my own experiences I've been in, some serious relationships. I've dated, I've gone on dates and been on the apps and done all of the things. I think it is really easy to become jaded and pessimistic. You and I have had a lot of conversations about me just kind of wanting to throw my hands up. Like, I don't know, what I need to do differently, but I definitely agree that there is a level of maturity that comes with, even with my clients. Like I like to practice acceptance and commitment therapy, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is an orientation that kind of dictates the things that come my way, the things that happen to me, I accept them. It's kind of like mindfulness. Like I'm acknowledging that this is uncomfortable. I'm acknowledging that this brought up something for me or made me not feel great, but there's a level of acceptance and moving on that is that's central to the healing journey. Is I've accepted this, I see it, I'm gonna keep it pushing. And so I think that's kind of the conversations I try to have with myself, even about disappointments with dating and disappointments with men and not expecting things to go how I want them to go. The older I get, there is a level of acceptance, and I think that definitely comes with maturing and trying to be satisfied with where I am and who I am and what I have going on at this point in time.
I often talk about the difference between living with expectations and expectancy. There's a difference. Expectations, you are starting with a preconceived notion of the outcome and a script, a picture
Yep.
that says, this is what's going to happen. This is how this is going to happen. I will get this, 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 and this. Now, when you live with that set of expectations, you set yourself up big time, right? When you live with that, because now what happens when those things don't happen the way you planned them?
You're crushed.
You're crushed.
Depending on your level of like coping skills.
Right, exactly.
But a lot of us are devastated.
We're devastated.
Yeah.
You know, we catastrophize.
Absolutely.
You know, because this didn't happen, but I thought this was what was going to happen.
Absolutely.
That's different with living with a sense of expectancy. With the sense of expectancy, I'm saying, this is what I want. This is what I would like. But you know what? I'm going to roll with it, whatever I get. And because I am healthy, I can handle this. Again, going back to the car example on the highway, we're just talking about you driving and how do you respond when folks cut you off.
Oof.
And you've driven with me. You know, I rarely ever react.
No, you're very mellow.
Because why?
You're very controlled.
I am assuming that you're going to make a jackass move. I'm assuming that.
And they almost always do.
I assume that you're going to pull over in front of me. I assume, I'm assuming that you are going to cut me off, that you're not going to let me in.
Yep.
And so what do I do with that?
Right.
If I tell myself beforehand, I am going to have a perfect drive and everybody is going to follow all of the rules of the road. When it doesn't happen, now I have road rage. But on the other hand,
because you went off script.
You all have all gone off script.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, when I just assume stuff is going to happen, I'm going in with the best of intentions. But stuff is going to happen.
You're prepared for the worst possible
I'm going to
outcome.
prepare for it, and I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to find another way. I just think that's that's why we have to be careful about the entitlement piece.
Sure.
Am I entitled? Am I entitled to perfection? Am I entitled to get everything that I want? Am I entitled to my script and my script never going off script? Am I entitled to that? I am not. Things are going to, stuff happens.
Stuff happens.
And stuff happens. We used to say when you were little, get what you get and you don't pitch a fit.
Don't throw a fit.
Yeah,
Yep.
so.
Yep.
But no, I think that how do you manage it? And I said this to you the other day, and I don't think I'd ever said it. I said, I'm starting to feel a little badly because I'm looking at what you all are up against.
Looking at the state.
I'm looking at the state of dating, and I'm going, oh my goodness,
it's tough.
This is tough.
What are some of the things that you see? Because I think I can talk about my experience, or maybe it would be helpful if I gave an example and you could say, yeah, I've noticed that, or like, that might be a function of like how they were raised.
What am I seeing? I can give you some.
Let's see if we have some similarities.
Okay. Immaturity.
Okay.
The inability to take responsibility for decisions.
Lack of accountability.
Yeah. Emotional immaturity.
Or lack thereof.
Or
emotional intelligence.
Yeah, the lack of emotional intelligence and emotional immaturity.
Sure.
Problem solving. I see too many young people that have depended upon other people to solve their problems for them.
Okay.
Young men.
Okay.
I just think about you have to, as a man, you got to be able to fix stuff. That's our nature. Our nature is fixing.
Your providers, your fixers, your
that's our nature.
Solver. Yep.
And when you can't fix stuff, and I don't just mean whether or not you can change a tire. I'm just talking about the mindset that, wait a minute, I am as a provider, as a protector, as a cover. I got to be able to make sure that I am securing my environment for the people in my environment. And the inability to do that because somebody else has always done it for you, that's problematic for me. That's really problematic for me.
It kind of makes me think. I'm smiling because you know how I call you about very mundane things, and obviously like that's because I got a secure attachment style. We have a secure relationship. I'm very like confident in our dynamic, but it's funny because I think about how a lot of characteristics that you have and that I call you for because you're my daddy, and I'm like, this is the person who helps me with these things. I will not always readily see those things in the men that I'm dating. So with the mundane things, I will call you because my fan fell out of the ceiling and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Come fix it. I'll call you because I'm getting ready to put down a weed killer in my grass. I'll call you because Simba ran away, right? Super like things that really do not warrant a phone call. But what you're talking about, the ability to provide, to hold space for me, to be present, and I will ask you like, hey, how do you think I should do this? What do you think I should say? How do you think I should go about this conversation? It's not necessarily because I don't know the answer myself. I'm very smart. You know that I'm very smart. Spend a lot of time in school. I do a lot of things by myself. There's a level of security that comes with being able to call a man. And so for you, me as a single unmarried woman, the man in my life is my father. So there's a level of security and confidence that comes with being able to call you. And I might kind of sort of know the answer, but I maybe just want to know what you think about it. And I have tried that in a couple of different relationships that I've been in. And I always find it interesting when there is a level of deflection or deferment. I might know what I want to do, or I could very well be in a panic. And if I'm calling you as my security blanket, as my sounding board, as my think tank, I am expecting there to be some level of engagement and you being able to problem solve or, like I said, hold space for me. And that's a big one that I do not see as a characteristic in guys. It is frustrating because I'm used to being able to do that. And I don't think that is asking a lot either. I don't think that you're saying that it's important. And I don't think that is I don't think that it's a heavy load. And I find myself concerned with the fact that seems to be like, oh, whatever you want to do, or like, oh, like, what's best, or, kind of just not having the capacity or the capability or maybe even the desire or willingness to hold that space, that I'm describing.
But I think a lot of that comes from what has been modeled for you.
100%.
And what you have seen. And I think about conversations with your brother.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would say to him was like, this is what men do. That was our conversation often for the last 2 years of high school. That every I don't know if you knew this, but every Saturday, because he frustrated me so much his first 10 years of school, and I finally took a different tactic. And my tactic for his last 2 years of school, and this was extraordinarily helpful. Every Saturday morning, we went out to breakfast.
I did know that.
And we went out to breakfast, and our talk was always this. This is what men do.
Yes.
And because I was trying to give him a perspective of life, you don't get to do what your sister does. You don't get that. There's a certain freedom that she has that you don't have. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain expectation because of your role in society, your role in life, mm-hmm. the way you have been designed as a man. These are things you do. Mm-hmm. And so I would say things to him. I'm thinking back to certain conversations, and I think a lot of young men never have these conversations. Mm-hmm. I think about sitting in the car with him in Colorado, and we getting out when he was moving in with you, mm-hmm. and you got out the car and pumped the gas. We started pumping the gas, and I told you get back in the car. And I looked over at him, and he was sitting on his phone, right? And I got out the car, and I pumped the gas, but I leaned over and I whispered in his ear, that will never happen again. Mm-hmm. I said, she does not walk from the train station at night by herself.
Yep.
She does not pump gas. Mom has never shoveled snow in her, well, I ain't gonna say in her life, not in her life with me.
Not since she's been married
Not
to you.
there are
She don't
certain
even know
things-
where the shovel is at in the garage.
Right. So what I'm saying is that there are certain things is that, no, I am going to cover and protect the women in my life, not because they're incapable, not because they're dumb, not because they're weak, but that is my role, is to protect as much as possible. And so therefore, I think that if I'm not having that conversation with him, where does he learn it from? Where does he? You know what I'm saying?
Social media.
And social media is not going to tell. You know what? By me even saying those things, I'm toxic.
Sure.
That is toxic masculine. What do you mean? I cannot tell you how many times I've had women say something negative to me or react negatively because I did something as simple as opening the door. I can open the door myself. I don't need you to hope. You think I'm weak? Listen, I don't even know you, woman. I'm just trying to be nice.
And it's hard. It's hard because I think everybody has weird stuff going on. Everybody has stuff in their background that we don't know anything about. And it sucks that that is the knee-jerk reaction from some people.
Right.
Because depending on what they were exposed to, depending on who raised them, depending on what they saw, what they experienced, what they did not experience, it sucks that that is the knee-jerk reaction to chivalry. Like, that's wild.
And to me, I just call it just being nice. The door is about to close. Why would I walk through the door and let you? I'm just being nice to you. I'm not, listen, I ain't trying to get your number. I ain't trying to date you. I ain't trying to hit on you. I am just being nice.
You're just being a courteous person.
Right. You know, I used to, this is so interesting. This is a little bit off topic, but I want to go back to that. But this is just a little bit off topic. You all have been in the car with me when you know if I see somebody on the side of the road, I will stop. You all used to say to me sometimes, Daddy, go ahead, I know you want to stop. I would do that because I would stop to help. It has been years since I've stopped to help anybody on the side of the road. You know why? I'm afraid that the moment that I pull away, they're going to take a picture of my my license plate and say this man was trying to lure me into his car. So I was like, I'm sorry.
Too many unknowns.
Right. I want somebody to, if my wife is on the side of the road, I want somebody to say, I want to help you. I want to do that same energy. I am afraid to death.
Yeah.
I saw a lady standing in the pouring down rain the other day, and she's standing at the bus stop. It was everything in my power. I wanted to stop so bad and to help. And to say, you know what, would you like a ride? Would you like to sit in the car? Something. But I was like,
you can't.
Nope, I'll end up on TMZ.
I mean, and even from a you're right, even from a safety standpoint though, the world is
crazy.
The world is a crazy place to live in right now. And even from a safety standpoint, people do weird stuff. They try to lure you so they can hurt you. But
let me go back. So I digressed. I digressed. So going back to the thing in terms of what a lot of young men don't know that that's what they're supposed to do because nobody has told them that. Nobody has modeled that for him. And I think that those are important pieces. You can make the assumption the young men are going to do that because that's what you've seen. You can make that assumption, or you can have that expectation or that desire. But for a lot of young men, they do not have that person in their life that is saying, this is what men do, and this is how you should behave as a man. This is how you should treat women. And again, I'll use another illustration real quick. You know, when Jerron went out to the prom, and he's about to get into the car with the young lady, and I told him, I know it's prom, and everybody thinks this is freaky deaky night, and you're just supposed to go ahead and do whatever you want to do. I said, but I need you to understand, look at that beautiful young lady there, and I need you to think of her and recognize she is somebody's sister, she is somebody's daughter, and I want you to think about how you would want somebody to treat your sister, your mother. And I don't care, tonight she is the king, she is the queen and you are the king. And I need you to treat her like the queen until she figures out that's who she is. Even if she does something totally out the box, you don't take advantage of that.
Right.
Men don't take advantage of weakness.
Right.
Men protect and men cover. I think too many young men, the messages that they're hearing in the culture is, no, that idea that I need you to protect me, that is a toxic mindset. So guys pull away. It's like, okay, fine, pay your own bill. Oh, do your own thing. And who am I? And so too many young men are stepping back because they get slapped too often, or they're given a message that it is toxic for you to step up.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with the conversations around toxic masculinity, but I just think that there are enough women who desire kind of like the healthiness that you're talking about, like covering and protection. And if you want to, be very traditional along gender lines, like men do this, women do this, I think there are a lot of women who desire that. And like you said, there's just not I don't know if like the ratios are off. Like there's just too many.
Are they off?
There's too many. I'm not perfect, but there's too many people like me who are like adamant about what we want long term, and there's not enough. Since I date men, there are not enough people of the opposite sex that are echoing that, basically. Like the ratios are just off. And I know that's why you said you kind of feel bad, because I've had a lot of conversations with you about like what I've dealt with, lack of commitment, lack of just the most basic things that you can imagine. Lack of dates, lack of commitment, lack of, what's the word? Like hop-to-itiveness, whatever that term is. Just in general, lacking motivation, lacking ambition, lacking emotional maturity. And this has been, consistent. It's been a consistent factor, and I feel that it's only getting worse, which is why I brought up, earlier, it's easy to become pessimistic, because what you're describing is something that has to start at the beginning. And I'm talking to men that have been alive for a long time. You know what I mean?
No.
And what you're describing is kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do if you're a grown-up? It's very hard the older you get, the more ingrained in your ways you become. And if you don't have that foundation that you're talking about, and this is not meant to be, it's not meant to be a conversation about solutions, because I feel like, that could be a whole other conversation. But if I'm encountering men who have not had those foundational, those kind of like paradigm altering conversations in their youth, like at the start of you developing into a man and figuring out who you are as a person, if nobody has had those conversations with you, what am I supposed to do with you when I get to you?
Well, yeah.
We don't have nothing to talk about.
That's why I'm talking. That's why I'm starting to say I feel bad.
You feel bad because I've talked to you enough about what I have dealt with, and it's funny because Mom and I have had conversations about, I think your perspective is a little different, no shade to Mom, but your perspective is a little different because you deal with teenagers often, and then you deal with young men, and you deal with grown men, you deal with fathers. I think that it sounds so good and so easy to say, find a man, that just mirrors you. Find somebody who's got the same credentials as you. And I know for me, as someone who dates, I am not asking a man for anything that I do not have, right? I know how much money I make, match it. I got a house, get you a house. I got a car, right? And then we're talking about values. Those are material things. But when I say it is incredibly difficult. And we live in Chicago, right? And I say to you all the time, even Black Chicago is very small. I say to you all the time, like, everybody knows everybody. You know, you grew up here, and then you went to school here, and so everybody knows everybody. I have talked to the men with the money and the houses and the cars and the degrees and all of the things, but it goes back to what you're talking about. If nobody had those conversations with you, or maybe it's a combination of you're kind of like the creme de la creme. Like we definitely can talk about statistics for Black men who are educated and don't have kids and all of the things I'm looking for, right? It's like 2 of them. Like there's not a lot of them, you know, like where y'all at? So I'm saying all that to say, I think that having these conversations, at least I know you get it because you see it, you actively see it. Sometimes mom will say, like, I don't understand why it's difficult. And I'm like, I don't understand why it's difficult either. But when I lay out the things that I am requesting, the pool, it shrinks and it shrinks and it shrinks.
You know what?
It's tiny at this point.
You heard me say this, and I've talked about it on this podcast several times.
Mm-hmm.
Boys play, young men prepare, men perform.
Mm-hmm.
But when young men fail to prepare, they become men who continue to play.
They keep playing.
And I see too many men who are playing because they have not been properly prepared to make the shift, to migrate from boyhood to manhood.
Yep.
And so
and that's
that
why
is
programs that you have, that's why I think mentorship is important. That's why programs that curriculum that you've created and programs that you are putting into place is important, because while I believe that you cannot teach an old dog new tricks, I do believe that you could teach an old dog I do believe that you can, new behaviors, right? I do think that there's always a level of unlearning that can happen. There's always new things that you can add to your inventory. And so I definitely think that these conversations are necessary, because yeah, it is frustrating when I'm saying, here's what I'm bringing to the table, and I'm wondering, why are you not also bringing these things to the table? But having that perspective of nobody had these important kind of developmental conversations with you, I think it at least helps me to conceptualize what is happening in the dating pool a little bit better.
All right, so you know what? Some of your friends had some questions. Is there?
Well, we talked a little bit about some characteristics of a good husband, or I guess a good partner. I know you talked a little bit about that kind of. Well, I would say, you know, for those that are listening to this, a lot of the things that you mentioned earlier that you notice are lacking, I would say you can take that list and flip it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, characteristics of a good man are, you know, emotional availability and emotional maturity. You talk all the time about, you know, being able to do a temperature check on yourself and kind of like check in with your own emotions and figuring out what's going on with me. If I'm off, you know, how do I address it? How can I add some more, you know, crayons to my coloring box of feelings? So
I'll give you 4 simple characteristics.
Sure.
That I think that you should be looking for in terms of a man. 1, he's an intercessor. What do I mean by intercessor? I'm talking about this man who is willing to stand in between. This man who is willing to go, wait a minute, you know what? I think about I had some friends when I was married, and I worked with these group of young men who were unmarried, or they were young married, and I would listen to them talk, and they would be joking in the van or whatever, and they would say, Jason, you never join in. I said, because my wife ain't none of your business. My wife and my life is not your business.
That part.
Okay, and so in other words, you don't get to. You know, there are certain things I don't talk about, and so I'm going to be this intercessor, but I'm also going to be that one who tries to run interference. You know, that's part of it. That's that intercessor. Does this guy protect? You know, does he protect you, or does he put you in harm's way? You know, does he speak truth? can you trust what he says? You know, if you lying to your friends, there's a good possibility, and I see you lying to your friends, there's a good possibility you lying to me. And so, is this person speaking truth in your life? Is he interceding? Is he standing in between you and danger, or is he bringing danger into your life? Is he a protector? You know, does he cover? I remember one, and I'm going to be kind of vague here, but I just remember a situation where there was the person that I know that I was doing something for you, and there was this guy that you were seeing, and he called while I was at your house working.
And he was at home.
And you're at home. And you're on the couch FaceTiming me like, what's up? And I remember at that point I went, you're done. I didn't say anything. But I'm thinking, wait a minute. Your 60-year-old dad with sciatica is over here working and you chilling on the couch because it's your day off? Bro, you don't know. You just put a nail in it. You're done with me. So later, if you want to come start talking stuff, that's in my book now.
Oh, for sure.
So what I'm saying is that I need to know that there's a covering.
Sure.
If I am going to, as a father, if I am going to give my daughter away, I need to know that you're going to cover her at least as well as I did.
Better.
Or better. Right. At least, that's minimum. I'm not saying you have to do everything I'm done, but I need to know that if I am handing you my prized possession, that you are going to cover her and protect her for that.
Do you have more characteristics? Because I think that kind of leads us into another question we got.
Yeah, I think the last one I would say would just be a provider.
Okay.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to make more money. I can tell you for the most of the part. Well, Mom and I traded off a lot.
Yes, you did.
You know, she didn't work outside the home for 13 years. Then I had a period where I was in school. She had a period where she was in school. She didn't work outside the home. When we moved back here to Illinois, you know, she was the primary breadwinner. But for the most part, she made more money than I did. And that has nothing to do with it.
Being a provider is not solely financial.
Right.
And I wonder if a lot of people do get hung up on that, especially there's a lot of online talk about, you know, women wanting men to be of a certain financial status to like pay all my bills and this, that, and the third. But ultimately, you're right, being a provider is not solely about how much money you make, but I think it goes back to, are you providing safety?
Right.
Are you providing security? Am I able to have hard conversations with you? Can I trust you? All of the things that you were talking about before.
Yep.
But what you were saying about the parents, you know, your parents knowing what they know about the person that you are in a relationship with. You know, you and I have also had a lot of conversations about who is this person and how do we feel about him and all of those things. So one question that we got is it important for your parents or your parent, whoever, to approve of and or like, because maybe they go hand in hand, maybe not, the person that you are dating, the person that you're in a relationship.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say the person that you're in a relationship with.
Yeah.
I wanna make that distinction because I think I'm using the person that you're in a relationship with because there is intention behind the relationship, and this might be somebody that I am considering spending the rest of my life with. So do you think that it's important?
This is the way I look at that. I think it is. I think there's great value in it. Is it absolutely critical? Maybe not. Because it also depends on the functionality of your parents. Because there are some folks that have very unhealthy parents and their standards. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's a function of that.
Sure.
That's a part of it. But I think that there is this, if you are in a healthy relationship, I do think that with your parents, I think it is important to pay attention to what they're saying.
If you value
If
your
you
parents and you
your
value
parents,
their,
right. I
because
think,
there are people, like you're saying, that are like, I could care less. I
Right.
could give a rat's, you know what?
Right.
Well, my mama think about who I'm dating.
Right.
You know.
Because mama might think a rat's about whatever. So I think that, no, I think that there's value in that. If you trust them, if they have invested in your life, they should know something about what's good for you and what's not.
Absolutely.
I think that there's also something about having an objective set of eyes. And parents are not always objective, but having another set of eyes upon a person. I say this, I do premarital counseling, and I tell people all the time when they come to me, listen, it is not my responsibility to validate your decisions.
Right.
It is my responsibility to help you determine whether or not the decision you're making is a good one.
Right.
So understand this. I may love both of you, but I am not in love with either one of you.
Right.
So therefore, I will look at this as objectively as possible, and I will say, this is good, this is not. I think you should get married. I think you shouldn't get married. But I will tell you that. And so
And what you do with that information is your choice.
that's entirely up to you.
Right.
But this is what I see from my perspective. Because once you fall in love, the lenses get really dirty. And you don't see certain things.
Yeah.
I used to say to you, you need your filter only keeps out short and ugly.
Okay, so if you're tall.
Right, like I said,
Yeah.
I said, you need a daddy filter. The daddy filter keeps out abusive, it keeps out unemployed, it keeps out a lot of other stuff.
Well, mine keep out unemployed too now.
Okay, yours might. I'm simply saying is that at that moment, there are certain things that I'm going to see that this is what I want for my daughter. These are things I
Absolutely.
want for my son. Now, I don't get to superimpose my life on yours.
Correct.
I get to give you information, and I've written this infographic.
Raising adult children.
The things I've learned about raising adult children, and I think I have 7 things on that list, and one of those things is that I give information. I speak when spoken to.
Yes.
And I give opinions only when asked.
Yes.
If you don't ask my opinion, you don't get it.
Yes.
I don't care what it is.
Yes.
And
that's harder for some parents.
That's
than
harder
others.
for some parents than others. Another thing that I say is that at this point, as an adult, I am more interested in, I have to lean upon influence
Yes.
rather than authority.
Yes. You spent 18 years raising me and molding me and hoping that all of the information and influence that you give to me and Jerron is solid, it's rooted in your values, it is going to help us be, well-rounded, functioning adults of society. And so when we do enter into adulthood, that is I know what I taught you, I know how I raised you, and I am hoping and praying that some of that did not go in one ear and out the other. I hope
some of it stuck.
I hope I threw it on the wall of your brain and it didn't slide off.
Right. And I think that's part of it is that, and that's another one of my 7 principles. I can't protect you from yourself.
Because one thing I'm going to do is get burned.
Yep, right. And so I'm
going to touch the stove.
Yeah, I'm going to do everything I can to put you in a position to succeed.
Yes.
But ultimately, you must make those decisions.
Yes.
As a coach, I can only coach so much. Once you cross the line and go into the field, you got to play.
And you're on the sideline.
And I'm on the sideline,
Yep.
and I cannot protect you from yourself.
Yep.
So I think that there is value in hearing, of getting wisdom, of getting insight and getting perspective. There's value in that. But ultimately, as an adult, you must make decisions based upon what you want and what you think. And then you must also, and here's another principle. If y'all want these 7 principles, hook me, reach out to me. I only charge $700.
He'll put his Cash App right here.
I'll put the Cash App right there for you to get my infographic. will not take responsibility for an adult's decisions.
Absolutely not.
And so if you make these decisions on the basis of, and you go against my will,
Your suggestion.
my suggestion, then that's fine. And I've told y'all all the time, I will not take glory for your success, but I will also not take the guts for your failures.
Absolutely.
You get all of it. You get all of the smoke. You get all of the glory. You get all of the smoke.
Yep.
Because I will not take either one of those things from you. You all did those things. You all have made those
You made the
accomplishments.
bed.
You made the bed. You sleep in it.
Yes.
Good, bad, or ugly.
Yes.
You take it, and I can rejoice. I can bask in the shine, but I'm not getting in the light.
Sure.
And I think that those are things that are important. So yeah, I think a parent's input is important, but is it the final say so? Absolutely not.
You got to be confident enough to make your own decisions, and like you said, you got to be confident enough to own them, whether they go left or whether they go right.
Yeah. Because here is the deal: if it goes wrong, I don't want you coming back and saying, "Daddy, you said it." No,
I'm grown.
You grown.
Yep.
You good and grown.
Yep.
Good and grown. Yeah, that's right. So
I'm not that old.
yeah, okay.
All right.
Anything else on your friend list?
I think we covered a lot of topics today. So I hope
did.
that people got something fruitful from our discussion.
Yeah, I'll say this to you as one thing that I've always said to you. I think I started saying this to you when you were 17 years old. And I'd always say, in your search for love, and I say this to all of my daughters out there, all of my daughters' friends who I consider my daughters. I'm always Pops.
Yes.
You know,
Papa Perry.
I'm Papa Perry.
Yep.
And I've always said this, and I'm going to continue to say it. In your search for love, do not lose sight of yourself, because there's not a man on the face of the earth that is worth losing yourself over. That is just the best advice I can give you. That's why I say it's so important that you learn to understand yourself.
Yes, develop a sense of self.
Develop this strong sense of self,
Yes.
strong sense of purpose, and operate within that. I am operating, you know what, if this person is with me, that's great. If they're not, that's great. You need to know that you are apple pie. Now, what do I mean by that? I love apple pie. I love apple pie with the crust, with the French lattice crust, the crumbles. I love all of it. I love apple pie if it's warm. I love it if it's cold. I love it if it has ice cream on it. I love it if it has whipped cream on it. I can use it with a fork. I can eat it with my hands. It doesn't matter. I love apple pie. But all of those other things simply add to the apple pie. The whipped cream, the ice cream, the heat, the fork, all of those things add to it.
They're accessories.
They're accessories. I love apple pie, period.
Just how it is.
You need to know that you are apple pie. That you are good in and of yourself. And that anything that anybody else brings to you is accessory, is addition, may make you taste better, but you need to know that you are apple pie all by yourself.
Because one is not a fraction.
And that is the last thing, is one is not a fraction. One is a whole number. And nobody else, you don't need somebody else to add something to you as if you were broken. One is a whole number, and you need to know that. And that is what I mean by that sense of self. One is a whole number. Don't go into life, don't go into relationships thinking in some kind of way this person completes you. They don't complete you. They may add something to you, but they do not complete you. So thank you, Jasa. Give me okay. It's my little honey lump right here. So I am so glad that you all were able to come in and get a little bit of an insight into this crazy relationship, this daddy-daughter relationship. And I really hope that those of you who are watching this really got something out of it. We hope that in our ramblings and our talking, you got some deeper insight into who you are as a man, who you want to be as a man, who you are as a woman, who you want to be as a woman, who you are as a person in a relationship. But my thoughts would just simply be, I need you to understand, know who you are, and live in that. Stop waiting for somebody else to make you something that you want to be. You become that. You become that, and you'll be all right. Thank you for watching this episode of Real Life Matters, where we try to take real life problems and real life people and come up with real solutions.
Thank
you
you
so much. Peace.